I'm Jeff St Laurent, and this is the Selling Coaching Tuesday Night Call. Great to have you all on here. And tonight we're going to talk about deciding on a niche and just everything around a niche. And before we jump into that, I just want to just make you aware of some awesome resources that I have for everybody. And I'm a firm believer as coaches, and I walk my talk here, and that's why I want to share this with you, is as coaches, especially as we're beginning, the number one objective in our business, and you hear me say this all the time, especially those of you that follow me, but the number one objective in our business is to build an audience and get people who love what we do, love what we teach, benefit from our education, and they follow us and they become raving fans, and you help them out just like I'm going to help you out tonight, and you expect nothing in return. And what happens as a result of that, people go like, wow, this is great. And now they want to follow you. Now they want to subscribe to your database. They want to join your group or wherever you hang out, and so they can follow you and be a part of what you offer because you're helping them. Then, because I talk about selling, right? We want to be able to understand selling as we work ourselves with coaches, because as coaches, if we don't understand selling, we're not going to survive in a business. We could be the best coach in the world, but you have to understand selling and marketing, and that's what I teach here. So now when it comes time for them, where they could utilize one of, let's say, your paid products or services, and right away when we're starting off as coaches, typically we just have coaching, or coaching services is what we offer. But when the timing is right and you've helped them, and it might be right away, it might be years afterwards, they will hire you, they will buy. And that's the objective to our business is, we want to monetize it, but we do that by building an audience. And that's going to be a really important piece. So if you check out my website, if you haven't been there, sellingcoaching.com. Under the university is where I will be posting these recordings, but also it's 100%, it's essentially a blog, but I call it my university, and I'm saying that purposely so you can understand how you can just turn a regular blog and just give it a little bit more value in terms of how you label it. But it's 100% video based, and there's tons, days worth of education on there around all different topics that are categorized. So this call will be on there. I usually will post it by the end of the week, but then you have a bunch of other calls, and from long videos from these calls to short, 1-2 minute selling tips as well. So please check that out. And there I have another free offer on there as well, which is a lot of valuable education. If you want to be involved with that, you can check that out. And then if you want to check out my private Facebook group, this is right now we got going on, and some of you on the line are participating in this already. We have a visibility challenge going on, and that is where, as coaches, we're creating 30 videos over 91 days. And most coaches or most anybody's freaks out about video, but that's exactly what we're doing there and it goes in alignment with what we're going to talk about tonight with a niche. Is a lot of people who are doing that challenge, it's part of it is if you don't have your niche and your message and you're working that out, it's starting to use video to practice in a safe environment, but also get exposure. So you create a video and you post it in the group, and maybe that's all the place where you put it right now. But it allows you the ability to just kind of talk it out a little bit, and maybe you mess up, maybe you can't quite get it out right, but that's what it's there for. And so over your 91 days, you can wordsmith and get your language better and become comfortable on video. And ultimately, we can use those videos that we can create either in the challenge or afterwards to market yourself, to put on your website, to put in social media. Because when you watch a video, it's amazing the connection you can get with someone instantly that you absolutely cannot get just through something that you write. So definitely please check that out. It's all there for your benefit. So now that I kind of went through those resources, let's jump into deciding on a niche. And I will start off and say this. Every single one of you listening to this already have a niche. You just haven't decided on it yet. The average entrepreneur thinks about, okay, I could do this. And then the next day, I could do this. And I could help these people with this. Or who can I help? I can help everybody with this, right? The challenge isn't not having a niche. It's maybe understanding it a little bit better so you can narrow it down. But mostly, it's deciding on one. And my hope tonight is that Well, I can't help you all specifically with your niche unless, we're working in a smaller group or one-on-one. What I can help you is really understanding the value of the niche, and understanding how it's going to help you, why it's going to help you, but then looking at with what you've already got or what you've already understand around it, because this is, I'm assuming most of you've heard this a million times before. I mean, not necessarily what I'm going to talk about, but getting a niche, and you've done some work on it possibly, or thought on it. So you have some potential areas. It's a matter of picking one and going with it, and that's going to be the biggest piece of it. So let's start off with this. We want to understand why it's so valuable. And when I say a niche, I'm going to rephrase it a little bit, because what does a niche really mean? I like to call it like this. I like to say it's one message for one audience. So important to understand that it's one message for one audience, and that message is relevant and it's specific to that audience. And when something is relevant and specific to an audience, what it does is it becomes more valuable. What I teach is selling, right? So I want to teach selling to coaches. So everything I talk about relates back to selling ourselves, understanding the sales and marketing process. Sales is about a need and the timing of that need. And so now when we think about that is that we've got to be in front of these people. And so in order to get in front of these people, we got to know, well, who are these people that we're talking to? Because the second we talk to everybody, we lose our value. And the less value that we have, what that means is they're less likely to buy, because it's not talking specifically to them. So when we narrow down our message, and we narrow down, who that message is for, and what specific outcome we're helping them with, those are questions we can ask ourselves. What specific outcome do I want to help them with? But when we narrow that down, the biggest value of having this is now we can find our audience. So this is the biggest thing. So if you don't have a niche and you don't have this message, when it comes time to market your business, because if you can't market, you're not going to get any business. You're not going to get any people. You're not going to get any leads, and no one's going to buy anything. So you've got to market yourself. But where do I market? I can market everywhere. I can in the world. I can go externally, offline, meaning, in public places, and I could speak. But then how do you know, what can you accept speaking engagements for? Where could you speak? Well, I could speak everywhere. One day I could speak at a nursery. Next day I could speak at a library. Next day I could speak at a networking meeting for professionals. The next day I could be speaking at a vet or a dentist's office. Do you see what I mean? How do I know where to say no? I can speak anywhere. What about online? Well, what groups do I post this in? Well, all of them. What social network should I be on? Well, any of them or all of them. And then we get confused. And then, well, what do I talk about? Well, today I'm talking about relationships, and the next day I'm talking about spirituality. The next day I'm talking about, I don't know, you name it. And so I get confused and I get diluted. Even if I've narrowed it down even a little bit further than that, where I get confused is I start talking around all different topics, and they don't lead anyone to any specific outcome. And again, how that relates to us in terms of selling is it's a lot less valuable. And so we rewind this a little bit, and let me go back to what I said earlier in saying that when we have a very specific niche, we know where to find our people. So we're to say this in terms of marketing. If you were to create a Facebook ad, and I'll just use Facebook as an example. So if you were to create a Facebook ad, and when you do that, you create an audience. And how you create an audience for a Facebook ad is you pick pages that people like. So you have to say, okay, well, and if I were working with you one-on-one, we'd come down to our work and we'd say, what are the top 5 pages that the people you're going after like? And if you can identify those top 5 pages, and we say, okay, these are, let's say you have the top 5 pages in front of you. They go, okay, what percentage of people that like that page, can your message help? Can your education help? The ideal answer is 100%. So in other words, if I'm working with new coaches, helping them launch their business, making selling simple and fun because of teaching that skill set, can I find 5 pages on Facebook where 100% of those people who like that page are coaches? Absolutely, right? If I'm targeting, let's say, widows, can I find 5 pages where, let's say, 100%, or pretty close to that, for any of this, pretty close to it, where 100% of those people are widows? Absolutely. And so now what happens is my targeting is much, much better. And I can talk specifically to those people. My titles, my descriptions, then of course the content and the education is much more relevant. I could take that same information and instead of coaches, I could target fitness trainers, or I could target dentists, or you name it. But the difference is that I'm going after one particular population and I'm getting in front of those people and the information becomes relevant for them. Therefore, now they're much more likely to click and listen, watch, go through to your website, go through to whatever resources that you have, consume it, and hopefully if it's good, they like it, and then they like your page, they subscribe to your database, they join your Facebook group, whatever it is. That's how you also get to stand out, because the world of personal development in general, in terms of whatever type of personal development we're talking about, is life purpose and fulfillment and attitude and mindset and behavior and all that great stuff. You just blend in. You're just another quote in a sea of quotes, and maybe you just happen to click with somebody. It doesn't mean you can't do your business that way. It just means that now what happens is you speak directly to those people. So that's one really, really big point in terms of why a niche. All right, so why that one message for that one audience is now it takes our marketing efforts and it makes it so much easier to find where those people are. Ideally, if we can get our niche down to a label, and when I say a label, meaning I used it earlier, like widows or coaches or dentists or plumbers, right? We can still niche down further and figure out, well, what is my message to those people? So while I work with new coaches, so aren't, a million other people working with new coaches. So why am I any different? Okay, well, that's my hook. I like to call it that hook. My hook is selling. I don't know if anyone else is really specifically focused on selling. And if they are, I know there's a few people out there, but they don't do it the way I do it, just because we're our own unique brand, right? We have our own unique message. We have our own unique way of presenting and doing our business model. But so now we go work with the plumbers or the coaches or the dentists, and you say, well, what do I do with those people? What's this one specific area that I can really assist them with the most? That's where we start to really get our hook and grab these people in. Doesn't mean we can't do any other things with them, but we've got to find the hook in terms of where's our entrance point? Where's our entrance point into our space, into our database, into our world? So it helps us with the marketing. And then I talked about this a little bit, but reiterate this point here again. So once we're there, then we become relevant. So if we're not relevant and specific to somebody in terms of what they're going through, and our language isn't relevant or specific to them, then we don't stand out and there's nothing compelling for them to take action. And that's the biggest thing is that when we're speaking to those people, we become relevant and specific, and then they take action. All of you know, like even right now, some of you are on your phones, you're surfing, you're still on your computer, or even if you're offline, you're doing laundry, you're cleaning something, you're folding laundry, your kids are running around, you're trying to put them to bed with your earpiece on. I mean, you don't stop. And there's so much required of you, and you just got off another call, and you're getting on this call, and then you're going to do, people are going, and you're online, and things are popping up, and things are dinging. So they're all saying, listen to me, watch me, sign up for this, do this, and you're distracting yourself. So what's going to stand out is when you put something out there, and instead of being everywhere in front of everything, you know exactly where to go. And what that's going to do is it's also going to drive your daily and weekly marketing efforts. So we can create a content strategy. We can create a marketing plan in terms of, what are the 2 or 3 groups that you participate in or a part of? What's the one social platform where your audience primarily hangs out at or on? Not all of them or several of them. It's like, what's one? Like, I hang out on Facebook. I'm on Facebook and I'm crushing Facebook, meaning that's my goal. It's like, I am just doing that. Could I be on LinkedIn? Could I be on Twitter? And sometimes I have a presence there, but I don't ever go on. Someone's like, hey, what's your Twitter handle? Or whatever you call it. I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, find me on Facebook. That's where I am. If you want to come see me, get on Facebook. And so that's where I'm focused. So a niche also helps you, really narrow down not only just where these people are, but then it helps you decide on your content strategy in terms of marketing strategy, where you go. How many groups are you a part of or a member of? How many email lists are you a part of? If it's not relevant or specific to what you're doing in your business, pause it, unfollow, unjoin, or whatever it is that you do so you're not bombarded with all this distraction. I do my personal development too. I work with my mentors in my business. I'm a part of certain groups, not just for my business and marketing, but also for learning. When I'm struggling with a title or a concept or something in my business or something online that I'm not sure of or whatever, I have my mentors. I have my few groups that I go into and I say, hey, help me with this. Help me with my social media. Help me with this Facebook ad. And so I have those places that are the most valuable to me, but there's only 2 or 3 of them that I get the most value from. And then there's only 2 or 3 groups that I'm a part of that I participate in and work with in terms of marketing and growing my business on one social platform. But that's all guided, that all goes back to my niche. And so I'm trying to really show you the value of this in terms of how it relates to our business. Not only in terms of it guides us in terms of what we do each and every day, but also where we do it on what platform. It helped guide us in terms of what we're going to be saying to those people, and then what we say becoming very relevant, specific, which lends itself to it being of value to somebody so that it stands out, and then they take action on it. And so kind of putting that all together for you so you can start to see, and again, you've heard this on some levels before, but I want to relate it back to the marketing and selling aspect in terms of the value piece. And also, you're less confused. So now that we kind of understand the value piece of it and all those components of it, let's take a look at, I'll give you a couple examples that some things that I've worked with in terms of some clients, so you can get an idea of how you can start to get out there, or how you can whittle down to maybe decide on a niche. So for instance, I have this one client that I've worked with, and we're still working with her right now. And when she came to me, it was very clear that she wanted to do life purpose. It was like life purpose coaching. And I'm like, okay, that's great. But life purpose, there's so much there on life purpose. And you're just going to be drowned out in a sea of life purpose. So I said, well, tell me a little bit about your story. And so listen to this example, but we're going to relate it back to you and your story. And that's where, when I work with people, I pull out their own story, and that's where you can find where you can kind of narrow it down, maybe find the label, and then maybe within that label get a hook, like I said before, like not just working with dentists, but what am I working with dentists on specifically? So she wanted to work with life purpose. And I'm like, okay, great. Tell me about your story. Fast forward, basically she had done 3 tours with the Peace Corps. I'm like, wow, that's fascinating. And she said, when she came back from the Peace Corps, she just went into this depression. She's spent a year over in South Africa and being with these people and just feeling lit up and having gone through comfort zones and being boundaries being pushed, but growing magnificently and feeling like she's contributing to the world, and then comes back to America and just is alone and is doing nothing and doesn't have a job or doesn't have whatever. And all of a sudden, it's just like, I'm not fulfilled. It's like, what's my purpose? Where do I exist? So we say, okay, great. So now what we can say is, well, where can we find these people who want life purpose? Well, we can find them anywhere, but it sounds as if people that are in the Peace Corps go there because something's missing in their world, or they need to contribute on a different level or a higher level. So they go there, but then when they come back, is it fair to say that a large percentage of them have gone through what you've gone through, like maybe some sort of depression or lack of fulfillment? Absolutely. So we can say, okay, you still want to work with life purpose, but can we market to Peace Corps people specifically? Are there, for instance, if we're going to design a Facebook ad, which we did, and say, okay, where are the pages on Facebook for Peace Corps? And we went to Peace Corps, and there's like, almost 400,000 people that like that page. And I'm like, okay, well, who's going to like a Peace Corps page? Probably people who are involved with the Peace Corps, right? Absolutely. So that's a good page. What about AmeriCorps? Yeah, same thing, just different name. Okay, great. Are there multiple pages and chapters? Absolutely. So can we go after these people? Yes. And what can we go after them with? What's our hook with them? To get their interest. Because ultimately, you're working with them with life purpose. But to go after them, or anybody for that matter, and just say, hey, we want to help you with life purpose, you're only appealing to a certain amount of those people. So he said, okay, well, when you come back from the Peace Corps, there's a transition of, you come back and it's like, oh, maybe it's good to be home. But then all of a sudden, it's like, well, how do you readjust? And it's actually one of the things that they talk about. So I'm like, hey, could you come up with some tips and some strategies to help people readjust once they get back to the States after serving for a year or however long they serve for? Could you give them some tips and strategies? Absolutely. And could that be kind of like a free offer that we can kind of grab their interest? And then all of a sudden, once they're in there, they're going to need life purpose. They're going to need fulfillment. And now you can be general because you got them already. See, so what we did was we took life purpose, general, very vague, very unspecific, that anybody could benefit from, and we said, okay, could we take an element of you and your past and your story? Okay, yeah, Peace Corps. Now, where do we find these people? Okay, very easy. There's pages that these people like, so we know where we can participate in and contribute to, and more importantly, create ads for if we want to go that route, to get in front of these people. And then what's going to get their attention? What's the need? Well, we're going after not just these people, but these people are coming back, because we know when they come back, at some point in the next several weeks or months, they're going to feel unfulfilled. And they're going to start either drift off, or they're going to, try and find another tour or do something. And that's where you come in. And you give them these great tips, and then they come into your group and they come into your world, and they start having more of this education. And then they can work with you. Then they can hire with you. So that was just a strategy that we went through. So if you can break it down and maybe relate it to yourself in some ways, and say, well, yeah, well, what's the general area? I want to help people with this. I want to help people with this. And anyone could benefit from it. But then we could say, well, what's part of your story? What's something that you went through, like the Peace Corps? Maybe it was a divorce, or it was an injury, or it was you lost weight, or something that you conquered or struggled with and overcame. And what that does is it now brings you down towards a more of a label or a message, or those types of people. In other words, who are those people that are going through that? What are they experiencing? What are they going for right now? What do they need right now? Is there a label for those people? Are they depressed? Are they alcoholic? You with me here? It's finding out some type of a label that you can kind of categorize some people. And then we could say, well, hey, what books are they buying? What pages do they like, for instance, on Facebook? If we know what books they're buying, we then can find out the authors of those books. Will those authors have websites, blogs, pages on Facebook or wherever? And so now we can start to say, okay, well, those people would most likely be there. So that's one type of strategy right there, where you can kind of say, okay, I want to take the general thing that I'm working towards, and then pull an element from what I've been doing, and then maybe find a label from that direction. So that's one strategy right there. Your story is going to be a huge element of where your message comes from. A lot of people that go through, let's say, a coaching school or go through the process that are really turned on to coaching, it's because they're going through, this is typically, so take it as this, typically they're going through something in their world. You know, they're unfulfilled, they're going through a transition, it could be a career, it could just be, they just need something else. And they see this coaching thing and they experience it somehow, or they're, you know, they start becoming keen to, you know, personal development or whatever it is, and they find a coaching school, or they find that they all of a sudden work with a coach, and it's just like, wow. And the reason why we're so drawn to it is because of how it's helped us, what it's done for us. And now we begin to change, and we begin to have breakthroughs and you know, grow and become stronger and become somebody more valuable. And then just like anybody that's been through something like that, is like, whoa, we want to give back. We want to like, wow, now this coaching thing has changed my life. I want to be a coach. Okay, great. We need to understand the business aspect of it, and that's what we're talking about here. But now that I've gone through this process, we can look back to, you know, who was I before this process? Who was I as I was going through this challenge? That's often those we're looking to help ourselves, essentially. So we've really got to look within to find our niche. It's not out there otherwise. It's within ourselves. And so who was I? What was I going through? What labels would I put on myself? When you found the coaching school you went to, if you went to a school, or books that you read that, you know, completely transformed you or changed your mindset, you know, go back to that space. And I know you all can go back to that space and go, oh, like, tell the story to somebody, to yourself, and go, start crying, start feeling the hurt or the pain or whatever it was that you felt, and then go, well, what books did I search for? How did I come across this source, this school, this book that started to change my perspective? And then search for it again. Go on to Google and start searching for it. But this time, do it intelligently, meaning leave a trail. As you type in words, what do you type in? What does it bring you to? What do you see that's attractive to you from that mindset of that person that you were? Not now, but back, you know, when you were challenged with this. Write those things down, you know, leave the trail. That's what I mean by doing intelligently. The words you type in, if you get to a website, you might get to the same websites and the same books that you got to, which is great, but now you know how you got there, and start to record, write down, etc. What are the words that you've typed in? What are the books that you came across? How did you find these people's sites? Because those words can start to become, like, for instance, keywords, or start to become pieces of your branding. Or you can start to look at, you know, people that are doing something maybe similar to what you want to do. I'm a big advocate of modeling. When I was looking for a mentor, and I graduated from coaching school back in 2004, and I'd done my own personal training business for 10 plus years at that time, and coaching started changing my life and helped me personally, professionally, etc. But I was looking for a mentor, because I'm like, if I'm going to succeed in this, I'm like, I want to do work with someone who's been doing this very successfully, and I looked at different models. And so that's where I started, and that's how I gained my success fairly quickly in terms of my business model. And also from a niche perspective, it's the same type of thing. It's like, start to look at people's websites and their products, their services, and what are they doing. But find people, you can't look at people who, like Tony Robbins and Wayne Dyer and your Jim Rohn, and all these big personal development and name people, if you will, because they're so big, they can be general. They can do whatever they want. They started off somewhere, but they can do whatever they want because they have, whatever the size of their database is, their audience is. So they can come up with an idea and put it out there, and it's fine. So when I say don't model those people, is because they don't necessarily have a niche. Their niche is, let's say, spirituality or just personal development. But you don't have the name, you don't have the brand, you don't have the audience. When you have that, you can start to have some flexibility with it. But in order to get that, you got to get to the point of, look at some of the people that they be doing very well, but in terms of their branding and who they're going after and some of how they're positioning themselves in their market. And you'll see people that you're very unclear, and you're going to see examples of people that are very clear. So for instance, if you went to my website, sellingcoaching.com, as soon as you get to my website, right there's a picture of myself, and it says helping coaches, or making selling simple and fun for coaches. Very, very simple, right? So right away you know exactly what's going on, and that's where you want to get to. Is just where can I get that one phrase that says in essentially where I'm going. And so that's where I kind of back it up to where I was saying is doing some of that legwork to find the people that maybe you can work from or model from. And that's going to be a big point in terms of starting to narrow it down a little bit more. Even just starting off and saying, what am I most passionate about? Where do I have the most expertise? If I had some knowledge right now that I could start talking about, what would I start talking about? What could I start giving for education that would help people? And even if it's not like, oh, I don't know where this is going to go yet. What I'd urge you to do is especially if you've put a lot of time into this, and maybe even if after you listen to what I'm talking about tonight, there might be some new ideas, but maybe you might be like, oh gosh, yeah, I've kind of heard this before, and maybe different ways of saying it, and you still can't quite you're like, yeah, maybe I understand the value of it even more now, but I still can't quite narrow it down. What I suggest is that start vocalizing from where I just said, that place where, what's some education that I could start talking about. That's why I talked about earlier on in my private coaching group on Facebook, the visibility challenge. Why I'm urging people to create videos, not just because it's a phenomenal medium to market yourself, but especially for those coaches who don't have their message nailed out yet. It's like, get in front of the camera and talk. Think of a topic you could give a 1-minute tip on and start talking about it and start seeing what comes out. You can't think about this. Let me say that again. You can think about it, and if after deliberating over it and focusing on it for a little bit, if nothing's really getting you there, what we do is we start talking about it, and we start developing content, and it could be on a bunch of different areas. But after developing some content, like even as I watch some people in the visibility challenge as they create videos, they definitely don't have a niche, but I'm starting to see a thread of where they're gravitating towards. I'm starting to see like a thread of kind of the education that they're delivering on, or their style. And that's where I guarantee you by the time they get through 30 videos, you're going to notice a thread, and that's where you can kind of pull that out of. And so that's why I go back to this is start speaking on something, start writing something. Of course, I urge you to do video because it's a great medium. But when you start doing that, you're going to start finding and seeing, well, what's coming out. And if you can identify it, that's where you can have other people say, can you read through this? Can you watch a few of my videos? What thread are you pulling through this? What am I saying? You can ask people those questions and, start to see, where they come up with. Another strategy to help really get you closer to, identifying your message and who that's for is, taking the time to write out your story. And I do this with a lot of my clients, as I say, well, tell me where you came from, tell me your journey, tell me your unique path. And everyone's got an amazing story. And especially after working in the fitness industry for so long, every single person in the fitness industry, exactly like the coaching industry, they're there because they have a story of what fitness did to them and how it transformed their life when they were overweight, when they were depressed, when they were, you name it. And it's exactly as I said earlier with coaching, is the reason everyone is in the coaching industry. If you're a coach, it's because of what it did to your life. So go back to that spot, and I briefly talked about it earlier, but elaborate on it, write it down, record it, however you choose to do that. and really like talk details. So don't just write about it generally, but if you were gonna like sit someone down and you were gonna like really hammer them with like all the details, and when I say details, I mean go into situations, go into your emotions, go into the rawness of the situations and what you were feeling and what you felt like. And when you get to that spot, what you can do then is that can be your content, that can be your education. I talked with one of my newer clients today, and they were going through a spot where, we're working with them exactly on this. And they were talking about how, they were in a spot in their lives where, they were doing really well with their career. They were making great money, but they just felt lost. They felt disconnected. They didn't feel like, they just felt numb to the world. They felt detached. And while superficially they had everything that most people would want, they had the great house, they had the great cars, they had the family with the kids, the 2.5 kids or whatever it is, and the friends and all this good stuff, but they felt detached, and so they went through this space and realizing that, it wasn't the money, it was the relationships, and they realized that all the people, all the relationships they had, they were only there because of what they could provide. Their friends were there because, hey, they had a great car, or they could, take them places or pay for things. But when push came to shove, where they weren't really there for them, and even the family, they were just there because they could provide for them, financially. There really wasn't any connection. And then through a series of events, this person started to get depressed. They started to drink alcohol. They started to go through a really rough spot. And so this became their story, and I'm asking questions, and talk to me about how were you feeling when that was happening, and what was going through your mind, and what made you do these things that are so uncharacteristic to you? What led you down this path, right? And so then when we start from there, I said, well, now what you could do is, instead of working with everybody, I'm like, you can work with people who are in this place of there's unfulfillment, there's life purpose in there. But where we can get these people is we can start looking at some of the symptoms. You can start looking at, potential, corporate alcoholics. I said something like that. Or corporate depression. And I'm just throwing some of those terms out there. I'm like, have you Googled something like that? I'm like, I wonder if you Googled corporate depression, what would come up? Maybe nothing, maybe a billion things. But what now we're saying is, can we work with those? Where do we find the people who are doing well financially, who have a superficially great life, but internally are depressed or detached or just numb, but they just keep doing it because they have to, or they're leading down this path? So see how we're starting to kind of narrow down, where this person can start working, and now we're starting to come up with some labels for them. We're starting to come up with, we already came up with alcoholism and depression because that's what they went through. And the reason I go there is not those particular effects, if you will, but whatever they are for you or have been for you on many different levels. Maybe you just get sick of a job and you just you were the primary breadwinner and you just were sick of a job. That was another client of mine. He's just and said, you know what? I'm providing for the family, but it's like, I can't do this anymore and I want to become an entrepreneur. And now they're starting to become working with wannabe entrepreneurs, people that aren't entrepreneurs yet, but they're in a job, but they feel stuck because they're the only income earner. They're doing well, but it's like they just know there's something more. And so it's like teaching, what does it take to quit your job? What does it take to, figure this out? So you don't burn bridges and you create a plan financially and communicate with your family. I mean, there then becomes the niche because this is what that person did. And I go back to telling you all these little anecdotal stories of people that I've worked with to help them, because within your story and those raw emotions, you understand what these people are going through because you lived it. And now you're on the other side of that. And you know what? Maybe you haven't created a successful business yet. Maybe you haven't earned a dime in coaching yet. Maybe you haven't helped anybody yet. It doesn't matter. We've got to get you to the point where, well, what have you done? And what you have done is you've overcome something. And have you solved it all? Have you figured it all out? No. But what have you figured it out? So you can help people from rewind a week even, right? Or a month even. And all of a sudden you've got credibility to a certain point. And you can talk to where that person is right now because you were there. Think of your friend who's lost some weight. They've been on the ice cube diet for a week. And you're like, oh my God, you look great. What have you been doing? Well, I've been eating ice cubes all week. Wow, that works. Let me do that. And all of a sudden, they're their mentor because they did it for a week and they lost 5 pounds. That's what people listen to. So why aren't they going to listen to you who's been doing this or overcome something? Are you with me here? Like that's what gives you credibility. So when people start hearing you talk about what you went through and what you learned from it and kind of put that into a concept or a strategy, what that does is you get instant credibility because they're listening to you and hopefully watching you and going, holy shit, I'm like, they're me. They understand me. They know who I am. And therefore, I feel drawn to you. I feel like you can help me. And that's the point. When they're listening to you and they start to think like, wow, this person understands where I'm at right now, and now they've gone past here, you're my role model. You're the person that can help me. To what level they'll allow you to help them really depends on what you have to offer them. And maybe you just have nothing right now, but as you start to develop something, and even if you have coaching as an offering, they start to see that, and then if they see it enough, that's when they might be like, wow, maybe I'll work with them as my coach, because you've helped them. But you become relevant because of what you talk about in terms of the raw emotions. And I will say this is when you can release anything that is maybe what you'd like to help people with and start focusing on what you can help them with because of what you went through experience, that's when you're gonna be more aligned and authentic. And that's when people are going to connect with you and you'll become real and relevant, and you'll have that instant credibility because they can relate to you. So in other words, one of my clients, they actually worked with a coach prior to me, and they were saying like, oh, you need to help people make money because that's an outcome that sells. Everyone needs to make more money. Everyone wants to make more money. And so this person was like focusing on like how to monetize your business. And I'm like, well, tell me how you've monetized your business. And they're like, well, I haven't. I'm like, okay, well, no wonder you're feeling inauthentic because you're trying to help people monetize their business, but you haven't done it yourself. But you're doing it because it sells or people like want to make money. Well, it doesn't work. Even if you could do that but haven't done it yourself, you're not coming from an authentic place. So what have you done? Do that for a while. Help people like that. And then maybe X amount of years down the road, then you can help them monetize. So in other words, like what I've done with my coaching business, like I said, I started off in 2004, and I'm telling you all these stories so you can start to get an idea of how they can relate to you and how you can hone in your message. And also not go down different paths that are inauthentic to you. So before I started working with coaches, I had my coaching business, my, if you will, life coaching business, and I worked with entrepreneurs, but I did it for 10 years. And I created a very successful, lucrative coaching business that was my primary income and my sole income for 10 years. And the reason I switched to coaches and helping them grow their business, more importantly with selling and actually creating an income so they can have a full-time business, I could do that, and it was authentic for me because I did it for 10 years. And I've worked with thousands of clients, and I've sold a lot of coaching. And so I know how to do it. And so I can talk about that authentically. I can teach people that. I can talk about selling because I've had a passion for it and education for it. So, but could I have done that? When I started off, I graduated from coaching school. Like, why would I work with coaches at that point, helping them create a successful coaching business? It's so inauthentic for me. And I'm sharing that too for you. So, what paths, or maybe you have different options. Because as entrepreneurs, we have all these, a new idea every day because we're getting bombarded by all this stuff. And then it's like, oh my God, another idea. But, we got to start filtering out some of these ideas and going, how right is this for me? And you can start to filter it out through some of the stories and examples I've given you tonight, especially around the authentic or inauthentic place based upon, your journey so far. And that's what makes it personal for you, is your story, and that becomes your why. And I'll relate this back to, if you go to my website, sellingcoaching.com, and you go to my About page, what's on there is a video at the top about why I do what I do. And for anyone that has a website that's going to create a website, what I would want to have you on there with your About page or at some place on there is why you do what you do. It's your purpose. Most people leave with what or how. Anyone can talk about what or how, but that's not what sells. What sells is why. Where's our motivation? What gets us up every day? What drives you into your office? Start with why. So why are you doing what you're doing? And that's got to come, it's got to be personal. And personal makes it real, personal makes it authentic, personal makes it relatable. And I talk about that video and that about and that why, because that's why I want to see you. So if you were to say, why you do what you do, that's another path to lead you to your message or your niche. Is to say, well, why are you doing coaching? And see what comes up as a result of that. And then go back to some of the things I told earlier. Is like, well, what labels could I attach to this? What books would this person have to buy? What position would this person might have to be in? You could also ask people that know you well or have been exposed to maybe what you do in any type of position that you've been in, past in a past world or a past life, a career, and just say, where are my strengths? Where are my skill sets? Where would you say I'm most passionate about? If I could help people do anything, what would that be? Who would those people be? Listen to those people. See what they say. See if there's a common thread through there. And here's where I'm going to start to wrap this call up, and is to say, wherever you get to with this, and some of you are, maybe haven't spent a second on this and just know it's important. Some of you have been, deliberating this for a while. Is you've got to get down to a certain point, and that's where you've got to anchor. That's where you've got, in other words, put your anchor down and start. And what I mean by start is you've got to start getting a message out there. You've got to start talking about something and seeing if you can kind of keep it within certain boundaries. Maybe it's not super narrowed and super focused, but, can you get it down to like a small defined area? And if you can stay within the boundaries of that area, then that can really work and help hone your message. One of the clients I've worked with is, he's really passionate about working with athletes in terms of the mindset. And so what we did was we tried to narrow it down, but we couldn't get to one space. But where we got to is that working with athletes, and the actual brand we came up with was Triple Threat Athlete. And where it came down to is those three areas of what is that athlete in those three areas. It's like they work with their mind, right? So it's the mindset during the game. It's the student athlete, so it's the academics, right? And then the other one is actually the skill set as an athlete. And that's the Triple Threat Athlete. And we brought it down to, well, instead of every sport, could we work with one sport? Okay, great, basketball. Why? Because there's passion there, there's history there. And see, that's how we begin to narrow the message down. And that's where we look at you, is to say, can we narrow it down to an area? Because now when you have that area, like I said, those three areas in that example, as I come up with all these random ideas, do they fall into one of those categories? Because if they don't, then I don't talk about it, right? So when I think about my branding, what I talk about is if I can't relate it back to selling, and if I can't have a good, like if I couldn't relate a niche back to selling, I wouldn't be talking about it. It doesn't mean I couldn't talk about it or couldn't educate around it. It just means it's not within my brand. It's not within my message. It's not going to be relevant for people. Even if I could give a great message on it, I'm not going to talk about it because I can't relate it back to selling. And that's my hook. And I could have everybody else, and you've heard a million people probably talk about a niche. But if you notice, one of the first things I did was tonight is I related your niche back to selling. Selling meaning there's a timing and a need. And it makes our valuable relevant and specific, which means it's valuable. And value is associated with cost. If someone says I don't have the money, it's only because there's no value associated with it. They don't see the value in it. And therefore now when we niche down and we get a very specific message, it becomes a value. So I want to show you how it guides you in terms of, as I said earlier, content development as well, and it keeps you focused. So even if you can start to narrow it down to a smaller area, at least it's going to keep you in that area. So you just don't start talking about anything. You start talking about something in a specific area, and then see what develops, and then see what threads develop from there.